Hi there, I'm Trevor Coote, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. Our guest on this episode is Jess Tetu. We will hear about Jess's journey through business ownership from buying Just For You Spa and Wellness when she was only 22 to expanding to several locations across 2 provinces and opening skincare, makeup, and jewelry product lines. While we find out that Jess's superpower is her work ethic, she shares practical lessons that are valuable to any business owner. I hope you enjoy this episode. Jess Tetu, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I have to admit that when I decided to start this podcast, there were a few people that came to mind that I wanted to interview kind of early on and set the tone for the podcast. And your name has been on that list since day one. So this is exciting for me. I know kind of generally your story, and I'm really excited to be able to share that with the listeners. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. Happy to be here.
So to start the conversation, I just want to get a sense in, like, obviously we're going to get into and the listeners will hear kind of your path through business, and it is a long and winding one. But what was the first introduction? What was your exposure to entrepreneurship and to business, either as a youth or kind of growing up, or just spontaneous kind of opportunity kind of presented itself?
You know, even when I was a little girl, I used to go to my dad's shop. He worked at a farm equipment store, and they always joked that like someday I was going to own my own business because I was always like making displays and like trying to like retail their like gross farm equipment stuff. And then I remember when I was like 9 or 10, I made this like recording on a tape recorder, and it was like, I will do odd jobs, call this phone number and I'll come and, cut your grass and dust your house and vacuum. And then I would phone people just like in the phone book and then hit play because I was too scared to like actually call them, and hit play. And then like, I was so scared. And then they'd call back and be like, yeah, I'll hire this little 11-year-old, 10-year-old to come like dust my house. And so I have always been an entrepreneur, like as long as I can remember. And then when I was early, so like 19, 20, right out of college, I was a single mom. It was like chaos, my childhood. That's a whole story for another day. But my whole journey coming to Saskatoon when I was 15 years old on a bus by myself, after we lost our house, knew I needed to do something to change my life and do something better. And so when the opportunity came to buy the business that I was working at, like I said, I was a single mom. It was kind of a never going to happen type situation. Like, who was going to buy it for me? Like, I didn't have any money. No one was going to give me financing. Didn't have any family money. And so it was a long shot, but very long story short, I worked my butt off, got real creative, and was able to finance the business and took over when I was like 22. And so I did that. And then from there, I was just in my element. I was very young. So, they say, what would you say if you could go back and talk to your younger self? My goodness, that'd be a long conversation. But I was just so young and so naive and really had no idea what I was doing. But within a few years, had already made a plan to have another expansion. And then that kind of just grew into more expansions. And then, that's brought us to where we are today, where now I own multiple and I'm still kind of going.
Okay, so let's step back to kind of that first acquisition, the first business that the creative financing. Was there an involvement with the person selling the business as far as some vendor financing? And
so I went to every bank that I could get a meeting with, and I was literally laughed out the door. I was told I should find a husband, I should ask a male, I should find an uncle, or go to my dad, and my dad was struggling heavily with addictions at the time. So there was nobody to go to. So that I went back to the previous owner, and said, that I did meet with one bank that was willing to give me like a small piece of the asking price, but nowhere near what I needed, because they kept saying like the business isn't worth it. It's not valuable. It's struggling. And, so I made a deal with her kind of to finance it. It was a crazy deal. The specifics around that are really quite wild. Actually, how I made it happen, I to this day look back and I still don't know how the heck I was able to do it, but I did. Worked my butt off and was able to pay her off very quickly, and then tripled the business within that first year, and kind of the rest is history, really. I mean, it shouldn't have worked, but it did. I think the way that I was raised and, with all the adversity that I came out of as a child, being able to like fight for something positive was just something that I had this like energy for that I don't even know where it came from. And so I was able to just like pull it out of myself and turned it around really, really quickly.
So typically vendor financing, there has to be some trust from the vendor in you to know that, you're going to be successful, and she sees that work ethic in you, assuming all of that was the case, like that really was your equity that you were putting in.
And I'd been working there already. So I was already running the business. She was living in another country part of the time. So I was already doing it anyway. And so at the end of the day, she had nothing to lose. The deal was a really poor deal on my end, frankly. I had 4 years to pay her off. All the money that the business made would go back to her. I would only continue to pay myself a very, very small salary as a manager.
Right.
Very low. I think I made like $1,500 or something a month. It was crazy. And then everything that the business made would go back to her until it was paid off. And I had 4 years to pay her off. If I hadn't paid her off or didn't pay her off, or if I was late, then she'd be able to take back the business, keep the money, and like we'd go our separate ways. So it was a really big risk because on paper it wasn't even possible or plausible to pay off that kind of money in 4 years. It would have taken 10 years at the rate at which the business was running at that time. And so I worked tirelessly, extending our hours, bringing on triple the amount of staff because we needed more staff to be able to have more funds. We opened 7 days a week. We extended our hours till late in the evening. I did every position I could myself, everything from answering phones to spray tans to I did facials, did all the books, all of the cleaning, like all of that myself, worked 7 days a week. It was just craziness. And I was able to pay her off actually in that first 9 months. So it was wild. We took our sales from $262,000 to $1.2 million in that very first year, simply by just like busting my butt and getting out in the community and shaking hands and building relationships and networking and donating and fundraising and, fundraising for charities and things and being there and being involved and giving back to the community. It worked out. The hard work paid off in it and it worked out. So it's a
unreal,
pretty crazy story, but I really felt like I had nothing to lose because coming from where I'd come from, it was risky, but it wasn't really scary for me because scary for me was like we were in shelters when we were kids and stuff like that's scary. This was like an opportunity and it was just such a positive that I kind of just set my mind to it and was able to do it. And then of course, as soon as I bought that first business, my mind went into what's next. What can I do next? I can do bigger. We can have a bigger impact on the community if we're a bigger company. And so it kind of just rolled from there.
But even with that risk, there must have been like the empowerment that you must have felt after, like you've kind of hinted at that childhood and the challenges that you had seen before that, just in life. Mm-hmm. And to feel that empowerment and that trust and that confidence in yours, whether it was in yourself or kind of the people around you that were saying, we can do this. And then to go 5 times gross in that first year, like that must have just been thrilling.
I think it was I was just so sick of surviving. I was so sick of barely making it that I wanted to change my life, if not for myself, but for my son. And break that cycle of like going nowhere and struggle, paycheck to paycheck. And I just was so determined that I could make something of myself. I just believed, even though I didn't get a lot of support from, my direct community. Customers were amazing right away, but I was so young. I can't even blame them, to see somebody at 21, 22 years old, all of a sudden running this business. It was, and I was young and immature, and I can see why I wasn't taken seriously. I had to prove myself. And so, it just was such a whirlwind, frankly. Like when I think back to it, I'm like, I know that I have that work ethic in me. I know that I've always been that way, but I just don't know what it was, that I just knew that this was like a path to get me out of life that I'd been living up to that point. I knew it was a new direction. And I had this drive to be in a position to give back to the communities that had supported me as a child. Like I wanted to be on the other end. For so long, I was like the one that people donated to, or like the church gave food to, or the shelters, or whatever it was. And I was so determined to like be on the other side of that and be able to create an impact. And that's what really took the business from being one little business to the size that it was, is I knew we could make a bigger impact. That's why I kept building. I really wish wish it was an easy answer, but I don't know what it was in me that just, I wanted to not survive anymore. I wanted to live.
And I want to break down like actually what the business is, because we haven't really, touched on that yet. But before that, how long were you working at the business prior to kind of having this conversation with the owner?
I've been there for a couple of years. I was just actually started there part-time. It's a day spa. So we did like massage therapy, pedicures, manicures, facials, body scrubs. And that wasn't my goal to stay there. I actually wanted to be a lawyer someday. I wanted to go back to college. I just finished college and taken my paralegal course, and I wanted to go back to school to become a lawyer. And I got this job part-time, basically just to like help pay for my son. He was still a baby. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the tranquility and the calmness that I'd never experienced before in my life. My life was chaos with, my family's addictions, and we had domestic abuse in our home and all sorts of things. And just to be in this space where we made people feel good all day and like quiet and tranquil and calm. I didn't know quiet and tranquil and calm. So I fell in love with it very quickly. I fell in love with the clients, gained their support and trust. And, I just knew that it was the right place for me. And when you fall in love with something like that, it becomes less work, than another job just to get a job. Like for me, it was just, I was so in love with what I was doing and the impact that we were able to make in our community by giving back and doing all of the cool things, that it just was like a love story, really. I fell in love with it.
So I want to, I'm going to jump way ahead by asking this question, and then we'll backfill all of the spaces. Do you still get kind of that same tranquil feeling from the business, because you're in a different position? You're running multiple organizations, multiple businesses. Does it still provide you that same kind of feeling that you originally had?
I would say no. Number one would be my first response would be no. But that's because it was never me that it made feel that way. It was making other people feel that way. What I realized early in my career, like very early into working in the spa, was that we were giving people, no matter what was going on in their life, if their husband was sick or dying, or their children were stressing them out, or their job was stressing them out, we gave them this like escape, this place of peace. And so it was never really me feeling the peace. It was me seeing that I could offer that to someone else, if that makes sense. And then, yes, of course we still offer that. So of course I still feel that, because that's like my only goal really with our clients, is to make them feel like they have a place that they can just turn off the world for a little bit and just pamper themselves a bit. So yes, to this day, I love that we still get to do that, and we still get to be that space for people. But it was never really that way for me, because I was always like in go mode. So when I say it was tranquil and quiet, I meant for the guests.
Yeah. I know you. It is offering it to somebody else for sure. So the spa, was it always called Just For You, or did you bring that name into it?
No, it was called Just For You Day Spa and Gift Studio at that time. It is now called Just For You Spa and Wellness, because we offer more than just spa services. We have lots of different, we have therapies, and we have counseling at one location. We have medical aesthetics at another. So we become more about the wellness, the overall wellness. So I changed it a little bit, but I did debate back then changing the name, but then I just kept saying to myself, but like, I want it to be this place that is really just for them. Like it's just for that person. And so I stuck with it. And so, yeah, the name remains the same, but it is a completely different, everything about it is different. I changed everything, the services, the protocols, the everything, but kept the name similar.
So the sense that I get, like, I want to talk about some of this evolution, because you've hinted at kind of multiple locations, multiple different brands and companies, and that's that's a big evolution of kind of your corporate footprint. But talking to kind of the policies, the procedures, the environment within, like it feels like it's really evolved from kind of a small,
Absolutely.
obviously single location operation to kind of more of this corporate environment
There
with
were only
multiple. Yeah.
four employees plus me when I purchased the
Right.
business, and now with all of the locations and an upwards of 200 teammates, everything is different. Not just because of a new owner, but because you need policies when you have that many
Yeah.
people. Right? And so it was very easy to manage when there was only a handful of us. But I learned very quickly as we grew that I needed to create policies. And did I do perfect, with every decision? God, no, we, tried and failed so many times. And that's how you learn what works for your company and what doesn't. It took a lot of education and a lot of talking to other business owners and learning from trial and error and failures and falling on my face to learn what worked, what didn't work, how to motivate teammates, how to interview, how to keep people for a long time. And we are in an industry, in the beauty industry, it is $1 billion industry. However, the typical rate for an employee staying in the industry is only 1 in 10 estheticians, so people that do pedicures, manicures, facials, stay in the industry after 1 year. Only 1 out of 10. So it's a very small percentage. And so you're going to always see that turnover no matter what you do. And that drove me crazy and did for a long time because I was like, what are we doing wrong? Why can't we be everything for everyone? And until I realized that was just the industry. Instead, I tried to work with those that did want to build a long career and give them like a beautiful place to work and offer benefits and pension and the things that weren't typical to our industry. And so now we have tons of staff that have been with us for 15 years, 14 years, 10 years, 9 years, 8 years, and even longer. And that's really, really unheard of in this industry. And yes, of course, we still have like the quick turnover of those ones that start, don't like it, leave, start, don't like it, leave. But in regards to the industry as a whole, it's very unusual to have people that have worked in the industry, especially at the same place for that long. Just so much change from those first days.
And what would you say, like you touched on it, the, building that environment. I've talked to others that I interviewed for the podcast around the most expensive lessons in business are not not going to university and getting a degree and those, it's literally on the ground doing the business. And you talked about trial and error and, what do you think, how impactful was that trial and error early on in kind of the development versus what you're doing now? Like how did that kind of evolve to be able to bring in experts and kind of support you as the company grew?
I mean, to be honest with you though, things right when you think you've got it down, the economy changes and the work, the employees change. So I can't even say that's like I figured it out, because it just changes. Awesome. Right when you think you've got it, like you're like, oh great, and then so it's just a constant learning, and it's kind of also the acceptance of that you're just kind of always going to be figuring it out as you go. And yes, I've learned a lot of lessons in terms of like, sometimes you're just a job for places and sometimes it's not going to go well. And sometimes, things don't go positively. And I would take things so personally, early in because it was my baby. It was like the business really was my baby. And so I would take things so personally. And now I recognize that like things are, it's just a job for some people or it's just business. And that took maturity and growing up a little bit. And even just the way that I would react or respond, I'm totally different now than I was early in my career just because of age and experience and learning about different people and how to work with different personalities and different work ethics and different cultures and different, just so much has changed since those first days. But I still haven't figured it out because it's always evolving, always.
But you're always evolving the business too, and that makes a big difference, right? If like you haven't kind of just found a niche and stuck to it and kind of floated along with the existing environment or structure. So let's talk about that. You start with Just For You, one location, Saskatoon. There's some growth obviously in that first year, and you take full ownership after the first 4 years. What was
I took ownership
kind of the
in the first 9 months. I had 4 years to do it.
Oh, okay.
I took over right away because I paid it off in 9 months. So
because
So then my goal right away was to open another location because, I mean, I always say it takes a little crazy to do the things I do, but I just kind of thought, if I can do this, let's go do more and bigger. And so we didn't even open like another little location. I went like huge and opened in Regina. So not even in the same city. We went from, when I bought the business, we were 2,400 square feet in Saskatoon. We did a couple of expansions there. And then I opened in Regina at 15,000 square feet. So talk about a difference in business.
Holy cow.
I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, go big or go home, and such silly, immature mentality because I was just like, I can do it. I did this other big thing. I can do this big thing, Yes, it was amazing and wonderful and great, but I bit off way more than I could chew. And it almost killed me that 2 years of like that first opening. I was on the road constantly. I missed so much time with my kids. And, I'm so grateful that I had supportive people in my world because those 2 years of like when we first got up and running was just chaos. And because I threw myself into that chaos, again, I learned so many lessons so that when I decided to open another one, because of course I just kept opening, I knew to go smaller, smarter, utilize the space better, make sure the square footage of the space is being utilized efficiently and productively. I'm not wasting. And the Regina location had these massive hallways with like big grand entrances and staircases. And it was beautiful to look at, but it was freaking expensive hallway space, right? And so I was like, I'm never doing that again. I want like treatment room space that's actually helping me pay the rent. And so it just got smarter as I figured it out. And so then we opened another location in Lloydminster, Alberta, which is where my mother is originally from. She was born there. And there wasn't really any competition there. So we'd done our market research. There wasn't really anything in the area. And so we opened that location, much, much smaller location, super efficient, inexpensive, very successful. And then we opened another location in Saskatoon because we were so busy. That original flagship store became so busy that we couldn't get people in, and we were getting complaints on a regular basis that we had like 4-month waiting lists and things like that. So we opened another location and decided at that time to build warehouse space and have our laboratories where we do like all of our body product line. And that's kind of when I started to realize I was ordering all of this product in bulk and spending a fortune on it, that it would be cheaper if we just created it and made it ourselves and had what we wanted to have in it, and then also had more income left over or profit at the end to be able to give back to the community and be able to do something cool with it. So that kind of was a seed that was planted really early when I started, cutting the check to pay for products all the time and realizing how much money I was spending. So then with that new development, we created the space to be able to do all of our own product line. And that started with just body products, then it was skin, then it was cosmetics, and now it's just completely grown. And then we opened another location in Regina. We moved to another big, beautiful space on Broad Street in Regina, and it's incredible and gorgeous. And we rebranded when we did that one with the wellness, spa and wellness. And it became more my brand. Not that it wasn't always my brand. I just kind of went with whatever. My focus was on building the business. It wasn't really on like, what does the logo look like and how is it branded and all of those things. Although they were beautiful spas, they just weren't like deeply my brand. And so I really worked hard on that and relaunched it when we opened our new location in Regina. It's gorgeous, like absolutely beautiful. And then we opened another location in Calgary just last summer. So it'll be 1 year in Calgary in August. So that's the spas. And then the beauty product line and the cosmetic line and all of those things just kind of organically grew because we were selling it in all of these all these locations. We started selling it online, and then we started getting wholesalers and other boutiques and spas and salons wanting to carry the product. So then we moved out of the spa into the building that I'm actually currently in right this minute. And we now have operations, merchandising, like all of our production line, laboratories, all of that is right here in this office and off-site from the spa. So now we do that as its own whole business. And that's really become successful as well. So it's a lot of juggling, but I love it all.
What's the name of the product line?
So Leah Reese Canada. My daughter's name is Elia.
Leah Reese.
Her name is Elia Reese. And so I thought, what if she doesn't like it someday or doesn't want it to be named after her? So I shortened it. Her name is Ellia. And so I just took off the first part and just made Leah Reese. And she's 15 and I started it when she was 2. So it's been around for quite a while. So now we have Leah Reese Botanicals, which is the skincare. We have Leah Reese Cosmetics, which is the whole entire cosmetic line. We have Leah Reese Body, which is like body products, body souffles, body butters, shower gels, things like that. That's what we make the most in most production because it's super fun and it's like our own version of Bath and Body Works, kind of like all cool scents. And then we have a jewelry line that we started during COVID because, again, learning from the retail sales in my business, we were selling a ridiculous amount of jewelry from different brands. And I thought like there was a piece missing of like that give back piece of like giving back to the community, which is everything that I do has a piece that always has a give back. And so I, had nothing but time during COVID. So I came up with a jewelry line and started manufacturing that. And so that's also done in this building. And now we sell to like 60 different wholesalers, retailers. We sell online. And that has become incredible. And it's named Iconic Betty, which is named for my adopted grandmother. She's no blood relation. She just kind of took us in as kids. And, so it's named after her. She helped me design the logo and stuff before she passed away. And we do really, really well with that. Kind of organically on its own just became this, big brand that I wasn't anticipating becoming this big brand, and it just kind of took off and people loved it and the quality is there. So it's done really well.
Unreal. I want to touch on, I don't want this podcast to become a business during COVID podcast, but I do want to touch on that just because your business would have been so impacted by it. But before we get there, I want to go back to opening that second location in Regina, and you kind of going bigger than probably you would have if with more experience at the time. Did you have 2 kids at that point, or
no? I had all 3 by that point.
All 3.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you made that comment about, kind of being more absent from your family at that time. Tell me about kind of that jump, like going into kind of the financing environment, the decision to do it, the pressures that you felt from various groups, and then that balance of being in a different city for so much time from your family.
So, it was a natural decision because we had so many clients from Regina traveling to Saskatoon. So they were on our case all the time. Like, when are you going to open? When are you going to open? When are you going to open? So it was always kind of in my mind that I wanted to open there. I didn't anticipate going as big as I did, but we found the most beautiful building. It was a historical building and it was just incredible. The landlord was happy to work with me and give me a really good break if I took the whole building. So that's kind of how it transitioned into like as big as it was, because it was on 3 floors with an elevator. And so I didn't go into it meaning to go as big as we did, but we did. And it just happened.
Right.
And then when it came to financing, I was able to get the financing to do some of the bigger stuff, like no problem, because the business was in a really good position. However, I didn't want to use financing if I didn't have to. I was hoping I could finance it as much as I could myself. I worked, leading up to opening in Regina, I worked on building like our gift card fund is what I call it. So it's when we sell a ridiculous amount of gift cards and you get like all the money today, and then, you can't spend it because you got to use it when they come in and get used. I got to pay my staff or whatever. So I took the risk of using that money for the business, knowing that like if I get put in a position that those gift cards come in and I need to use them, I can go back to the bank. I've already got it approved. Everything is good. I did end up getting a little bit of a loan for the business just because things in a 15,000 square foot, 150-year-old building become problematic when you start ripping walls open and stuff, and the plumbing and all of those things. But we were able to finance a lot of it ourselves. And then we did all of the renovations ourselves. So not only did we do that in the first location when we expanded and made it my own, we did all of it. Everything, I'm talking all of it, like everything from laying the flooring to painting 15,000 square foot walls. We did it all, my husband and I, and a couple of girlfriends would come and help paint and stuff. I decorated it all myself. We did it all ourselves. So we saved probably $300,000 by doing that, which I believe is why the business was successful right from the start. It was more time consuming than I thought it would be because, you know, I'd done the renovations before in the first location, but I never realized, like, I knew how big it was, but I just didn't realize the time commitment it would take. So it was very exhausting. And we would take the kids and like put a movie on for them, and we'd be painting, and I'd go work, and Aaron would stay, and my husband would stay home with the kids, and then he'd go lay floor and I'd stay home with the kids, and we'd drive. Like, this is how amazing my husband was during this time. He would get up, go to work. When he was done work, he would leave work at like 5, drive to Regina, put like 6 hours in of working, and then drive 2 hours back, and then go to work again the next day. And then I would do it for 2 days. Like, it was crazy what we did to get that open. We brought on a girl to help with the kids. Like, she came during the day, who ended up actually, I brought her on into my company. She was my nanny. And then she came on into my company and stayed with me for like 14 years as one of my like leads. She's amazing. But it was a lot of sacrifice those first 2 years. Like, the kids came with me a lot, and my auntie lived in Regina, so I'd be like, hey, can you take the kids for a couple hours, you know, and we just do a little bit at a time. And it was a lot of traveling back. I'd work, come home for supper, you know, and be home for the night and turn around and go back the next day. And so I basically just drove back and forth for that first 2 years, like constant. And yeah, it was chaos. Like, it took me a good 2 years after that to even like just physically recover. I was exhausted, and I mean, it paid off. Would I do that again at that level? Absolutely not. I'm smarter now. I know how to do it differently, but that's what it took at the time. And, you know, I don't regret it because it made me appreciate being in a position to like hire a painter. This last time in Calgary was the only time I've ever hired someone else. And it was the best not having to paint, because all of my locations, we've painted ourselves. We've done all of it. And I did all the decor and all the design and all of that, but I didn't paint in Calgary, and it was the best feeling to be in a position. Was like, like, not happening. I'm not doing it if I can't hire a painter. Yeah, it was a lot of commitment and a lot of sacrifice. And my family was very involved in those decisions. Like, every time we opened a new location, we sat down as a family. I said, look, this is what it's going to be like. Mom's going to have to work a lot for a bit, but then I'll take the whole summer off and be with you like 24/7, and we'll get to do this, and we'll get more travel time. And my kids have always been very involved in those decisions right from the time that they really, you know, could communicate with us. And so they've grown up in the business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about that piece in a little bit, kind of that balance, and dive into that a little bit more. But so you talked about obviously the huge amount of pressure of opening that second location and everything that you just described, going out on a limb with the product, realizing that you're paying to have product brought in. We can do that ourselves. Let's open a warehouse space with another location, and then the jewelry line in honor of your grandmother, your adopted grandmother. What at any point can you remember going, what if it doesn't work? Like, maybe to yourself or to others around you. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
There's lots of things I did do that didn't really work out. I just don't advertise those, right? And so if it didn't work out, I would have just figured something. Now I knew what I was capable of doing. I came from an absolutely garbage background. I should never, stories like this don't happen to girls like me, is what I was kind of led to believe. And so, with backgrounds like me. And so I knew now what I was capable of. So if something didn't work, I would have just tried again. I was very smart in terms of how much I would invest. I would take baby steps when it came to the product line. We'd try it, make sure it was good, try it, make sure it was good, try it, you know, and we did baby steps. Same thing with the jewelry. I brought in like 10 pieces to begin with, 50 of each, like just to see, did
Right.
really well next time we did. And so it was never like some crazy investment. The businesses were, obviously, because I was signing 10-year leases and things like that. But
Yeah.
I kind of just went into it going like, it doesn't really scare me, because worst case scenario, I learned something and I have some financial debt, which will suck. But I know what I'm capable of. I'll just pick up the pieces and go do something better and bigger, and I'll try again and I'll make it better. But it wasn't scary for me, because scary for me was having no food, sitting on a bus at 15, not knowing how I was going to survive, paying my bills at 15, renting an apartment, working full time while trying to graduate high school, and like shelters and things like that was fear for me. So this wasn't really scary. It was an opportunity, and I only ever really saw it as an opportunity. So I guess my mind just saw things a little differently, but all the time I would be like, oh my God, what if it doesn't work? My anxiety, I'd be like, what if I'm like destroying everything I've worked so hard for? But I just really worked hard. I made educated decisions. It's not like I was just like, well, let's open a 15,000 square foot space. I like weighed all the different spaces and the amount we'd pay and what the benefit of this one would be. And I did the market research and all of those things. And so, I mean, in regards to the businesses, luckily they worked out quite well. However, not everything that I tried worked out the way that I wanted to. I invested a ton into the cosmetic side of things, and COVID hit, and the cosmetic industry took a complete dive in a different direction, meaning you don't compete with big companies like Sephora and Amazon. And so I had to completely shift gears and redesign, and now we're still just kind of working on that. The cosmetic side of things, I wouldn't say it was a fail. It certainly wasn't a fail, but it certainly wasn't a win. You just kind of pick up the pieces and try something different and move along. It's just business.
So I don't want to dwell on this, but I said already that we'd come back to it. What was that major impact of COVID? At the time I had a gym, and it was like, you get the notice, close your doors, right?
Yeah.
Your income goes from whatever to zero.
Mm-hmm. So there's three main things I do in my career. Number one is the spas. Number two is our like cosmetic and skincare line. And number three, I'm a public speaker that I share my story of like my adversity and the success of my companies and giving back and philanthropy and all of that. We were in an industry that got told immediately we had to shut down. So we were mandated to close because we couldn't touch anyone. So bad time to be in an industry where you touch people physically when there's like this space. We were in the industry of cosmetics where everybody was wearing a mask. No one was buying lipstick and lip gloss and things like that. And my public speaking, there was no events. So all three areas of my career just literally overnight closed, done. I went into complete panic mode, cried every day, laid off our entire team, and panic. But I don't sit in panic long. I'm a solution person. I'm like, we got to do something. I've got $100,000 in rent to pay. We need to figure this out. And so I got really creative and just I can't just sit by and wait. And so I looked at the inventory that we had in all of our spas, locked up and closed down for months at a time. And I thought, well, we have all this product. What if we somehow can get it to our customers? What do they need more than anything right now? They need like some self-care. People are freaking out. And so we created like how to spa at home, like take care of yourself at home. And we took all of our retail products and our knowledge and created these like spa at home packages and sold them basically through Instagram and Facebook and over the phone, and had curbside pickup, curbside drop off. And, we were able to raise $100,000 in that first month and pay our rent. That I created the jewelry line because I was like, well, jewelry isn't impacted by this. Like, let's, and so I just stayed busy and kept coming to work every day and, got real creative, and we survived. Not everybody did. And that was devastating because I didn't know if we were going to make it through it, but we did slowly and surely. And we maintained while we were closed, which is why we survived when we reopened, because we hadn't gone so deeply into debt. Because I say this all the time, I've never worked so hard for a $25 sale in my life. I was on Instagram, like selling things like crazy because every dollar helped at that time. And because we did that stuff, we survived it.
Yeah. I'm assuming there was another version of the outcome from COVID where you didn't, regardless
Absolutely.
of that work ethic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the fact that we did, I'll always be grateful for that. And
sure.
If we wouldn't have done, we didn't qualify for much support from the government. It was just devastating. Yeah, it was, again, one of those moments of like, I don't really know how I did it. I just did it. I didn't want to go back to where I came from. And we got busy and got creative. And I did mentorship sessions. That's what started my mentoring. I'm a mentor for entrepreneurs. So I take clients and help walk them through the hardships of business. That's where that kind of came from, is because people were freaking out. And I was saying, like, I can help you. Let's walk through this. Let me be with you so you don't feel so alone. And that kind of started the mentoring. So I did that. I did some public speaking virtually. I was talking to high school students and, overcoming adversity and just different things like that, and was able to keep paying the bills. But if, not everybody has those other angles or creativities to be able to keep paying. And so I'm very grateful that I did, or I don't believe we would, be here at this point.
Unreal. I mean, it was obviously a devastating thing for so many businesses, so many people, emotionally, financially, physically. I ask very often in the interviews, but if you can think of a hardest day in business, but I think for you, it has to be that, like, unless you can think of a different one, but like that time of kind of getting
that was it, because we certainly came out of it years behind where we were financially. I didn't pay myself I only just kind of restarted paying myself again. Like, I didn't for a long time because we were just digging ourselves out of this hole, and we were in a really successful position. And if it impacted us at that level to the point where we almost didn't make it, I just feel so devastated for every other business owner. But what really impacted me, to be completely honest, wasn't my business getting hit. It was the fact that I had to lay off all these team members. Like, for the first time in my life, it wasn't just impacting me anymore. This was the livelihoods of all of these people. And that just broke me. And I just cried and cried, because it was something so out of left field, like everybody says, and I had nothing. I felt like so helpless. But it wasn't me anymore. It was the livelihoods of everyone else that was really just like gutting to me.
Yeah, that's actually come up in another episode, and I write about it in one of my articles about my hardest day in business, and it's the exact same thing: the laying off of staff, that you feel like you're breaching that trust that they had in you, and even though COVID is outside of your control,
and having no idea if I could bring them back ever.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to be able to say, like, I got you, we'll get through this, but I couldn't. I didn't know if we would make it through it. I never knew right until the day we came back if we would make it. And even then I wasn't sure how long we'd last, and that was the hardest part, is like, I wanted to fix it. I wanted to make it better for them, and I couldn't. And I was their like fearless leader that like built this company, and why couldn't I just like make it better, and it was such a helpless feeling. And that was the hardest part, because I know how strong I am. I knew how I could pick up the pieces for myself, and, God forbid COVID would have shut off like the business down completely forever, permanently. I could have rebuilt. But what about everybody else, And that's what really I had a hard time with, was the livelihoods of everyone else. That just crushed me.
So one last piece I want to go back to, because we've touched on it a little bit, and I don't know where you stand on kind of the terminology around work-life balance. I don't know how I subscribe to it even, but like, you've gone through a lot. You've told stories about, young kids on the road, doing renovations and getting the business, growing the business, but getting it ready and preparing it for that growth. What does that continue to look like for you? Your kids are older now. Like, is your business, with all the things that you've got going on, all consuming, and do you let it be?
No. So I've learned a lot. That's a big lesson I've learned, is that you can't take your business with you when you go someday. And on my deathbed, I don't want to look back and miss my family and my kids and wish I would have spent more time. However, I do believe that sacrifices are made when you're trying to build something like this. And I believe I did that, and I put my time in, but I don't think it needs to be forever. I came to this realization many years ago, actually, but I always say there's no such thing for me as a perfect balance. For me, it's be where you need to be when you need to be there. So if my kids need me, no questions asked, I'm going. My family needs me, like, I'm going to be where I need to be when I need to be there. And then there's going to be times where something happens with the business and it needs me, and I'm going to have to be there. And I try to just be where I need to be. And if I find that my business needs me more than my family, that's when I take a step back and go like, can somebody else be maybe putting out some of these fires? And
Right.
that's when I hire and I delegate off, is when I recognize that if my family takes more of my time, that's fine. But if my business takes more, the higher end, then that's when I hire someone else. Because I did that already. I put my time in my years of like missing hockey games and kids sports and whatever else. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And it also gives somebody else the opportunity to have a career too, right? So now I've got the benefit of that. But I don't know that there's ever a balance, because sometimes your family needs you double time. Sometimes your business needs you double time. And you just got to do what feels right for you and for your family, and communicate with your family and your spouse. I'm very grateful because my spouse is very supportive on both ends. He has no problem saying like, hey, you've been working too much lately. You should take a couple days off. Like, he has no problem. And so I've learned over the years, how to have boundaries and how to balance it a little bit better by just being where I need to be when I need to be there. And if it feels like I've been missing my kids more or my family, then I just say like, sorry, I'm out for a bit.
Yeah. Do you see you in any of the folks that you have in your organization now that will step up and kind of be the next generation of Just For You?
I have the most incredible directors on my team from all the locations, to the point now where they handle almost everything, which is what I believe should happen in business. I put the time and the effort in where I did the 24 hours a day all the time so that I didn't have to do it now. But I have such beautiful people that work together as a team that make those decisions. And, now in our big management team meetings, I kind of just get to like listen to everybody and like, make the final decision if there is one. But for the most part, I've given them the freedoms to make those decisions because they're better at it than I am now, because they're hands-on, they're in it every day.
Yeah.
And, they do sweat in the game, and I trust them completely. And so they've been with me, all of them have been with me for a really long time. Some as long as 20 years, some as long as 15 years. They know wholeheartedly what they're doing, and I know they'll make the right decisions. And that was years of building and working with them and building that trust and loyalty between the two of us, right? So that they can make those decisions and have a career that pays, so they're not in the room doing treatment still, but they can be in a leadership role, because we grew the business together and created those opportunities. Because you can't do that when you've got a 4 team and 4 members on your team, those positions are available.
So I want to wrap up. This has been an amazing conversation, but I do have to ask, what does the 5 to 10 year window look like for Jess Tetu and for Just For You? So, is it more growth? Is it
one lesson I learned a long time ago is you never share the big magic. I never share too soon. I'll never jinx myself. I am working on something pretty big and something pretty incredible and amazing in a couple of areas. And, fingers crossed it all like plays out the way that I hope it will. But I never really slow down. So, big stuff is to come, but I'm tight-lipped about it right now.
But you're not looking at the next couple of years. Your feet are going to be up and sitting at your cabin and just chilling for 23 of 24 hours a day.
I'm looking forward to. We opened 2 new locations this last year and a half, and that was too much.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to like a summer of like relaxing a little bit, at least like
good.
Being off. You're never really off as an owner, but spending some time with my kids and being at the lake, and but I am working on some pretty big magic. So
very awesome. Very awesome. Yeah, I definitely will. And we'll have you back to talk about all of the magic that happens. Jess, this has been so amazing. As I mentioned, you were at the top of the list. I knew your story generally, but it was so wonderful to be able to share this with the 3 or 4 people that are going to listen to this podcast eventually, however many it is.
There'll be more than 3 or 4.
We'll see what happens. Thank you so much. This has been really amazing.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.